Now welcome to another lightning response video, though this is mainly going to be a sort of a follow-up to yesterday's video, which prompted a ton of interesting questions and comments, shall we say. And if you didn't see that video, it was, for the most part, about the recent song or music video put out by Amanda Stenberg, who stars in The Acolyte, of course, as Osha and May, where she talked about all the intolerable racism she says that she has been receiving lately. And in that video I tried to sort of give both points of view, while also of course giving my own take as well, with the goal being to hopefully give you something to think about, especially from the perspective of the other side perhaps, and then to come to your own conclusions. And many people did indeed do just that. There were, as I was kind of saying, there were certainly a lot of people coming to a lot of different conclusions and saying how they felt about this one way or the other, which is always encouraged to hear on this channel. Even if you completely disagree with whatever my take might be, I always want to hear from you. So anyway, I am just going to dive right in and do a few questions or comments from yesterday's video, though the first one didn't actually come from that video. It came from another, or from a poll I think, but I do believe it is a rather relevant one to the conversation, and I've been seeing a lot of people sort of asking this very question in one way or another. But anyway, it comes to us from Plush Bro, who said or asked, I have to wonder at this point, with ripping off the birth of Anakin to calling fans sexist and now bringing in Ki-Adi-Mundi, was this show designed to be hated like the Velma show was? And, well, I didn't watch Velma or really pay attention to what was the deal with it when it came out. I did randomly hear a few things here and there at the time, but don't really know enough to comment on that exactly. However, I did watch She-Hulk, so there are or have been shows, or at least one show, where at least part of the point, maybe the main point, was to be hated by some people, was to get a reaction from the fans, or for, in a sense, the show itself to be able to comment on the reaction it was going to get. It basically predicted the hate it would receive in order to kind of make the haters of the show out to be the villains of the show. In other words, it was intentionally made a certain way in order for people not to like it. It was designed to instigate, and when it instigated, they patted themselves on the back for thinking they had made a point, when in reality they'd made a really bad show that people had every right to criticize because it was more about, again, making a point than just trying to entertain, which is what the people who complain about these type of things are actually complaining about. That you care more about inserting an agenda than you do just making a quality show and making quality entertainment. So in an odd sort of way, you could almost say it proved the people it was trying to criticize, it proved them right about what is going on in modern entertainment. But anyway, not to talk about that abomination of a show too much, but I certainly think, especially given some of the things that this show, that The Acolyte, has included or done, which this comment pointed some out, things like a birth similar to Anakin's, as well as including Ki-Adi-Mundi of all characters, and just in general painting the Jedi in a very poor or negative light, even including one taking their own life because of his guilt. Well, they had to know, or someone who does know Star Wars at Lucasfilm would have had to have told them or pointed out to them, or so you really think or hope, that it was indeed going to get a reaction from some of the fans, that some would take issues with these creative choices. And I mean, we even know that Dave Filoni was part of the creative process, or oversaw it and offered suggestions even. And no matter what you think of Filoni, the guy does know Star Wars, and he had to know some would not like the direction of this show. And so the question then becomes, much like with what She-Hulk did, was this in any way, shape, or form, or in any capacity done intentionally or not? Was the purpose of it, or part of the purpose of these choices, to get a reaction from some of the fans in order to perhaps make a point about those fans, though maybe not quite as overtly as something like She-Hulk tried to do it? Was this perhaps done in an effort to continue to paint a portion of the fan base as hateful and toxic, in an effort to maybe invalidate their criticism of recent Star Wars, or maybe to even have them just reject something with diversity in it, in order to show that, or for them to be able to say that, see, we need this message in Star Wars because so many people out there reject it. So many are against diversity, and that is why it is so important to continue to push it. I mean, that is basically what She-Hulk tried to do, isn't it? It tried to say, again, right in the very show, very overtly, very in your face, that look at this huge problem we have. Look at all these people hating on the show just like we predicted they would. They're nothing but hateful and evil, and the only way to combat them is to continue to push for diversity and equality for all people, because they're doing nothing but rejecting it and standing in the way, or even trying to turn things back around and take us in the other direction. And that then kind of brings us to this comment from yesterday's video that said, none of the people involved in this show are Star Wars fans. Their writing clearly contradicts the Star Wars lore, and the writing is just plain bad. The actors agreed to be involved with Hedlund. They made that decision. Amanda Stenberg is the daughter of a rich white male. She is the one who is privileged. 15% Rotten Tomato audience scores show you the truth. Stenberg's comments still show her stances on other things, which do affect the way she acts, her ideology, and who she chooses to do business with. Why should we look at her side and the side of these people when they are not even sane? And I guess I would respond by asking, why should they or would they look at your side or see your point of view or try to see it, since you basically just called them or their beliefs insane? And look, I'm not trying to call you out personally or anything, and I even agree with a lot of what you said there. But going along with what I was talking about before, about the point of the Acolyte, or maybe one of the points of the Acolyte being to instigate people, to instigate the other side into saying something so that they can respond to it like they now have. But anyway, the problem with this, the problem with calling them insane or hating everything about what they stand for, it only reinforces their beliefs and makes them want to double down. The same way Stenberg, putting out this video made you essentially feel the same. They made you want to comment and say something. And this was kind of the point I was trying to make in yesterday's video, that this back and forth calling each other names, and in some cases calling each other terrible, terrible names, but it's never going to convince the other side they're wrong or to even question anything they believe or are doing. And to go full-blown politics here for just a minute or two, but this reminds me of what's happening right now here in the US about the upcoming presidential election. I personally know people in both camps. I know people who are voting for both guys. And you know what's interesting about both sides, or what they say, it's that they spend more time talking about why they hate the other guy than why they support the guy that they do. And generally, and you see this all over social media, but they just call anyone who supports the other guy, they call them an idiot or something far worse perhaps, because they are supporting him. And guess what that actually does? It makes them, anyone on the other side, it makes them want to vote even more for that guy, and helps assure they're probably going to show up in November to do just that. I mean, I see a lot of people wondering, how could you even support or vote for that guy given what they've done here or what they did there? Not understanding your hatred for that guy, the constant attacks against him, are part of the reason why so many people really want to vote for him. They want to vote for him to spite you and to defeat your side. No more, no less. And yes, I really do know and get along with people on both sides of the political spectrum. And both sides talk to me. And do you want to know why? Well, it is because I listen to them. And even if I don't agree with them, I try to understand them. I try to see it from their side. And when you do that, a lot of the time, they'll listen to you right back. And when you do it that way, you can even change their minds sometimes. Maybe not entirely, but you can open it up to other possibilities when you don't try to beat them over the head with a hammer or call them the worst names imaginable because of what they believe. For example, and I know I have told this story before, but I went to Star Wars Celebration back in 2019, and I was standing in line for like 2 hours to get into the official Lucasfilm merchandise shop. And there was a group of like a half dozen guys in line ahead of me who were talking about how much they loved The Last Jedi. And I mean, they were just gushing over it. They loved everything about it. It was a masterpiece in their eyes. And if you know me, if you watched my videos back in the day, you know I didn't like that film at all. And so, because I had a couple hours to kill while I stood in line, I wormed my way into their conversation, their love fest of The Last Jedi. And I mainly did that by kind of saying I can see your point and all that sort of thing. I didn't say I liked the film, but I agreed with them that, okay, I get why you liked it. And then eventually I brought some counterpoints in, especially when they started to talk about all the haters of the movie, how terrible they were and how could they hate this movie. They just hate everything Star Wars and all that sort of stuff, the usual talk you would expect. And so I kind of countered by saying, well, maybe this is actually the reason why they don't like it, very politely, or that maybe you're kind of wrong or making some wrong assumptions here and just not really seeing their point of view. And though by the end of our hour-long talk or so, I don't think I changed their mind about The Last Jedi. I don't think they suddenly hated it, but they were now open to criticism of the film. They had begun to see things from my side, and when we parted ways, we did so as friends. We had a new understanding of the other side, and, well, I'm the better for it, essentially. I'm the better for seeing or talking to people who really loved that movie, and they're better for hearing it from my side and maybe understanding that, no, we are not all the devil because we did not like that film. And this, of course, all goes along with what I was trying to say yesterday, the point I was trying to make, that you don't necessarily have to agree with somebody when you hear them out. You don't even necessarily have to compromise with them. But trying to understand their point of view might open them up to understanding it from your point of view. But if you just constantly attack, if no one ever tries to take the high road, they're going to do the same right back to you. And where is that going to get you in the long run? How do you ever resolve the problems we have, both in the Star Wars fandom and beyond, if we don't even try to understand what the other side is even wanting or trying to say? And I certainly get there are times you have to take a stand against true evil. Not all things should be listened to and understood. But ask yourself if you really think the other side is truly evil, or if they're responding to your constant criticism by attacking you right back, and in so doing, becoming more and more extreme. Are the constant barrages, the constant attacks against the two sides, is it only separating us further and further, entrenching us even more in our beliefs to the point where we are starting to even believe things that maybe we don't, just for the sake of being on that side? Are we becoming more and more extreme because we feel that is the only way to defend ourselves from the other side? And all of this then goes along with quite a few comments and or questions I got on yesterday's video that asked if I truly thought, let's call them for simplicity's sake only, if I truly thought the anti-woke side, the anti-woke YouTube channels and stuff, if they are truly fighting the good fight or not. Is this really them wanting to see Star Wars get better, or is it something else now? Or did it start out well-meaning and it has mutated into something else? Is this now purely an ideological war that they're waging and they're kind of using Star Wars as a battleground? Or is it just a grift, essentially? Are they using Star Wars to get people angry in order to keep them angry, in order to keep them clicking, in order to, of course, just make money? And along with this, I was asked if I think there actually is or isn't an element of the Star Wars fandom that is indeed racist or bigoted in some capacity, and don't I think some of them are actually attacking those involved in Star Wars with hate? And to start with that last question first, are there bigoted fans in Star Wars? Well, I mean, almost certainly, though I do wonder how hard it must be to love Star Wars given that, yes, it has always been rather diverse, if you really stop and think about it. And I can't help but wonder if maybe the question shouldn't actually be, do maybe some bigots use Star Wars as a means by which to sort of wage their war, to get attention and to make their point in a way that is actually going to get attention? I mean, Star Wars is one of the biggest franchises ever. It is constantly talked about on social media and gets attention from the regular media all the time. And so, is it not the perfect place to get attention with your terrible views? Now, I'm not saying that would explain all the hate. As I said before, yeah, there are probably racist Star Wars fans who do and say stupid things, but if that is how they feel, I don't think any other fans really want to consider them fans. If you are going to go on social media and attack somebody over their race or gender or whatever else, I don't think the majority, the vast majority of fans on both sides of this argument want to consider you one of them, which is what a lot of people don't understand. Just because I do not like, say, some elements of Star Wars does not mean I should be lumped in with the people who want to say some really terrible things. That is not fair. Oftentimes when the media writes these articles attacking how or saying how racist Star Wars fans are, I think they need to go further about making a distinction between, yes, there are some terrible people who either are fans or want to use Star Wars as a platform, but there are a lot of people, the majority of people, who just have issues with the quality of Star Wars we are being given. But anyway, I also think this can kind of go in reverse, that because of just how popular Star Wars is, that it has a huge fan base, that it does or would or can make the perfect place to preach a narrative to as many people as you can get to listen to it, because they're going to watch it because it's Star Wars. I think those who really want to, say, push diversity, for example, they could very much be attracted to something like Star Wars because so many are going to, as I was just saying, so many are automatically going to watch it and talk about it. And along with that, they are going to get pushback, which then allows them to, as I've been saying here, to say, you see, this is why we need to push for more diversity, because so many are rejecting it, when in reality, though, a lot of them are just rejecting your bad stories. And if they just decided to, say, create their own IP to make brand new stories that were just chocked full of as much diversity and messaging as their little hearts desired, I really don't think anyone, or that many, would really care about it. Sure, some would probably poke a little fun at it or mention it, but for the most part, they'd probably just let them have their thing. But as I've said before, that is kind of the problem. Most people would just kind of ignore it. They're not going to watch something just because it's diverse. No matter what your race, gender, or sexuality, or whatever else it might be, you probably want to watch something good, right? Which is the point many are trying to make. Diversity on its own does not equal good. Just because you put diverse Earth characters into Star Wars doesn't mean you're gonna churn out good Star Wars. And also, when you make this sort of implication that people who are diverse are going to enjoy this just because it is diverse, you're kind of saying that's all they care about, which is a really odd thing, because again, I would wager, no matter what your race, gender, or anything else is, you want to spend your time watching quality entertainment. But moving on, as for the question about do the channels who criticize all this constantly really care about it and want to see it get better, or is it just about the money or ideology or whatever else? Well, I think most of them started from a very good place, and at their core, they may still very much care about this. In fact, I think they do care about this. However, I do think some maybe have gotten a bit lost along the way. Like I've said before, you do have to ask what they do if magically tomorrow everything they're complaining about got better. Do they really want things to get better, or is it kind of nice when things stay bad and when things get really bad because it allows them to keep making videos and profiting off of it? And yeah, you can certainly bring me and my channel into this conversation as well and point out that the controversy around the Acolyte is making me or my channel more money than I normally make. It's been a sort of boon for my channel. And I'm not going to try and lie to you and say that it isn't nice to, see some bigger numbers on my videos. But the thing is, or in my defense, I guess, is that I do also cover the Star Wars related stuff that isn't exactly great for my channel or doesn't get me the big numbers. I covered the hell out of the Bad Batch Season 3, for example. I praised the hell out of it too, and not a ton of people were interested in that. But I did it because that's what I wanted to talk about, and that's because that was the relevant Star Wars topic at the time. Though that said, when yes, a video has a high view count or tons of questions or comments are left on it, that does tell me that people want to talk about this stuff or for me to make videos on it, so I am going to do that. I am going to talk about the things people want me to talk about. I'm not just going to make videos in a vacuum, essentially, and ignore what the current topic is. Again, sometimes that current topic is going to be very popular, and sometimes it's going to be the Bad Batch Season 3, and it's going to be a very niche audience. And so, speaking of all this, of giving your audience what they actually want to watch, when it comes to, again, for simplicity's sake, let's just call them the more anti-woke channels, well, they do get tons and tons of views, right? People want to watch them. And nobody forces anybody to watch them. They don't come into your home and threaten to beat you up if you don't click on their video. And even though, sure, a case can be made that they do tend to keep people pretty angry, and that is not going to help us solve the problem in the long run, it's not going to help bring peace to the Star Wars fandom, and I wish maybe they tried to focus on that a little bit more. But even though I wish there could be a bit more understanding from both sides of this debate and that there wasn't a battle zone all the time, I do think whether you like it or not, whether you agree with what they do or not, it's their right to make the content that they want and the right for the people to either click on it and watch it or not. It is always about choice. It's always about freedom of speech, in my opinion. I just wish sometimes we would use that freedom to be a little more understanding of the other side. But anyway, that is going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about anything and everything I had to say here. Or you can always feel free to ask a question for a future lightning response video. All you got to do is start your comment off with "Hey Thor" and then ask away. But whatever the case may be, whatever you feel, whatever you think, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.